You're listening to Geeks Unleashed.
A podcast that covers what's current in the world of pop culture.
I'm Mark Brassington, and I'm in London.
And I'm Jasmine in Texas.
Welcome to Geeks Unleashed, episode 70.
If you are not already subscribed, you can find us at Geeks Unleashed everywhere, including your favorite podcast platform. Remember, 5-star reviews help us get found by more listeners, so please rate and review Geeks Unleashed on Apple or Podchaser.
As usual, I'm your host, Mark, and I'm joined by
Jasmine.
And this week we are joined by Phable from the PCP Bad Batch on Instagram and YouTube. Welcome, Phable.
Hey, shit. How's everybody doing?
Oh, we're good, man. We're good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Pumped to review this movie.
And to kick off October's Horror Fest, we're kicking off with our first review of a double bill of A Quiet Place Part 1 and Part 2.
And spoiler warning, this is a review show. So if you have not had a chance to watch A Quiet Place Part 1 or Part 2, you definitely want to pause this and come back later because we're about to spoil it all.
So Phable, like before, what I do, anyone that's been on the pod for the first time, before we jump into anything, like to pick your brains a little bit and just find out a little bit what your story is. How did you?
Yeah, we put you on the hot seat.
Yeah, in the hot seat.
Go for it.
We'd love to know what your secret origin story is. Like, how did you get into comics and pop culture? You know, how did you get in on the ground?
I mean, with pop culture, I think I've always been a fan. The things that are kind of popular today are kind of the things that I got into when I was a kid. I grew up in the 80s. So a lot of things kind of had their genesis there, right? Like a lot of horror movies, video games, cartoons, a lot of epic runs in comic books, things of that nature. So I was exposed to pop culture pretty early. And I just fell in love with stuff like that. Like the first cartoon I could remember watching was Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends.
Oh, I remember that with Iceman and Firestar. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So I was introduced early.
And then what about comics themselves? Because did you say to me you were fairly recent with comics, like in the last 5 years or something like that? Well,
I had collected comic books as a kid, around 7 or 8 years old. So we're putting that around 1988, 1987.
Yeah.
I was introduced by my grandmother's coffee table. She had a bunch of comics laying on the coffee table.
All right, Grandma.
Yeah.
Was those her own collection or?
I think it was my aunt's collection. I had an aunt that was just a little bit older than I was. But she didn't keep them in bags and boards or anything. She would read them and just toss them on the table.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It'd horrify you now, I imagine.
Tell me about it, especially with the issues that I was introduced to. I wish I had those issues now.
Oh yeah, I know, man. Like, so was there any particular character that pulled you in?
Yeah, man, Wolverine, the X-Men in general. Because the comic book that I had seen on my grandmother's coffee table was X-Men 212, which if you remember the cover of that one, it's Wolverine, but he's all bloody and cut up. His suit is all ripped and mangled. So yeah, that was my first issue, and man, I've never seen Wolverine look like that. I mean, to an 8-year-old who used to watching cartoons, you see Wolverine looking mangled that way, just savage. It was awesome. It just blew my mind.
Yeah, I love Wolverine. Like I think there's so much that appeals about him. Like he's got a good heart. Like, you know, if he sees a kid, there's nothing he wouldn't do to save that kid. But you know, if you're a bad guy, there's no stopping Wolverine.
Yeah.
He's like the hero that they kind of allow to kill. Like, you know, right. The Punisher gets a hard time, but Wolverine seems to get a free pass. So. So is there anything that you're enjoying right now, like whether it's comics or TVs or movie, just anything that you're really into right now?
Right now I'm really into collecting comic books at the moment. I'm doing a lot of modern books, a lot of indie books, and I'm currently collecting Transformers figures, which is a love of mine from the 80s too. So
a big Transformers fan. Like those figures cost a lot of money. Like you're
yeah, they sure do. They even cost a lot back then. I don't even know how my mother got them for me. But yeah, it's quite an expensive hobby. I mean, it depends, right? Like if you get on the ground floor of a lot of these things, you can save some money, but you got to be on top of it. That's the thing.
I've heard that the figures are almost as popular as like comics are, but obviously like they kind of release them and then people are just instantly gone and they're like on eBay within like 24 hours and things like that, like double the price. So
yeah,
I've heard that you've really got to keep it.
Action figures on the whole. I mean, I don't think kids are collecting these things at all.
No, they're not.
I'll be super honest with you.
Not the kids of this generation. No, they're certainly not.
Oh no, they're like on their iPads and
yeah, exactly. They are technologified. They permanently have some kind of device in their hand.
Right.
They've got no interest in actual like playing or doing any of that stuff. But so is there anything that's come out this year, like comic wise, that you're particularly loving? Like, is there any books like that's sort of get into your top of the reads for 2021?
A book that surprised me a lot. I wasn't expecting to like because I really didn't follow the character too much. Is Black Widow.
Okay, I've read that. Yeah,
Black Widow.
I read it a few years ago. Was it Phil Notto was doing the art a few years ago? I read that run, but I haven't read this current run. Although I have to say, because of you, I did pick up issue 11 with the Miles Morales cover. I haven't read the book, but because you were banging on about Miles variants the other week, I grabbed the Miles one because I thought it was a pretty cool variant. But I've not read the book at all. But yeah, did you do that mainly because of the movie? Like picked it up or?
No, I just picked it up because it was Kelly Thompson. Who I had enjoyed a lot. Her writing was pretty good. I followed a couple of, like she wrote Sabrina, the Teenage Witch.
Oh yeah,
which is an actually really good book. And so I just followed her to Black Widow. And man, her and Elena Casagrande, those two ladies are putting on a clinic over there at Black Widow. Let me tell you.
I'll tell you, I'll have to check it out. Do you know, we were chatting to someone earlier and they were saying like Marvel and DC put out roughly about 80 books a month. And there's just no possible way to keep on top of those. So that's why I love picking people's brains and finding out what you read in. And like what I like to, if you can find out what other people are reading, they kind of, if you've got, in the community that we're in, and it helps get good recommendations from other people, like, so it saves me having to go through all the rubbish. So actually that's a probably harsh thing to say. There's actually a lot of good books out there, but there's probably too many good books out there, so to be told what the cream of the crop is, like, so
I think that's the biggest problem, is there's too much good stuff, period, man. Too much good TV, too much good video games, too many good movies, too many good comics, man. It's everything. It's a golden age for everything.
Oh, do you know, when I was a kid, I used to have 4 channels on the TV. And I used to read like a book a week. Like, now my daughter told me earlier she's read 5 books this year. I was like, 5 books this year? I would have done that by February. I used to get in trouble like for reading books. Like my mum used to catch me upstairs with like a torch on reading. Like, I told you to go to bed. I'm like, oh, I want to read this book. Like, I want to know who the murderer is. So just before we sort of jump into the reviews, like obviously we know each other from obviously your online presence as part of the PCP Bad Batch, and just be like interesting for our listeners to hear what the PCP Bad Batch is and how it got started. Like, what's the origin story of that?
Well, basically, it's a group of guys that are just like everybody else, right? We all love the pop culture stuff, comic books, toys, cartoons, you name it. We love it all. The way we all met was through Robbie's Pop Culture Philosophers channel. In his chat, I know you guys know Robbie really well. Yeah, we all found each other in that chat, and we would meet there every week, every Sunday. And he would have these 3 almost 4-hour shows, and we would just
his live show, his live show.
We would just have a blast in the chat, just talking back and forth, clowning around. Robbie would get involved. We would all, it was just like a good community, a good place to be on Sunday nights. So one day I decided, I don't want to wait till Sunday to talk to these guys again. I really like these guys. I want to hang out with them more often. So what I did was I found them all on Instagram. I just searched them out, found them, and I created a chat room. And in that chat room, all the guys from the PCP chat that like kind of stood to the end, because Robbie calls his chat the PCP Army, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But a lot of people come and go out of that chat. But if you're in the last half hour, that's what I would call the PCP Army, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it would be the same group of guys every week. So those are all the guys I added to the chat. Little did I know that all of these guys had aspirations to be YouTubers and personalities and stuff. I met all these guys before they started their channel. So that's how can I say it? It's a great coincidence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Almost like it was meant to be in a lot of ways, I think, because I mean, what are the chances that all these guys are like, they're doing their thing on YouTube and stuff, and it's taking off, and I happen to know all of them. It's crazy.
It's nice to be able to like find your community or your tribe of people online. So
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. I never had anybody to talk to before any of this. When before COVID, I would keep my pop culture love to myself because not really a lot of people around me like video games or any of that kind of stuff. And when I met these guys during the pandemic, man, like I said, it's almost meant to be. I know the pandemic is a horrible thing, but
yeah, but it's good to talk about the good things that the pandemic has brought people. Yeah,
right.
I mean, there's always good stuff that comes out of bad. So and it's always nice to hear the you don't want to think that COVID, all it did was just cause havoc and misery everywhere around the world.
Yeah.
There's going to be good news stories. And I've heard a lot about people that have started their own businesses out of COVID. Like my sister's one of them, to be honest. So like, there's a lot of people that have done something positive. So to hear that you formed a network of people that actually, although you don't see each other face to face, you've sort of formed virtual friendships and actually launched YouTube channels and your own Instagram show, Blame Phable, and every Wednesday. What I love is how you guys became friends in Robbie's channel. Then you formed a group, and then you went from there to launching what you guys call Whiplash Wednesday, and you basically all launch a show every Wednesday, and how you don't overstep. You do it like when one show finishes, another show starts,
right.
And also you all mix between each other and promote each other. And I see your hashtag grow together, and I think it's great actually just seeing the support that you guys give each other and forming that community. And I kind of think like there's a few people like us and Three Bros that go in and out of that with you guys as well.
Yeah.
So and like Robbie as well. So
all of you guys are definitely friends of the show. We love all three of you: Cerebros, Robbie, Mark, Jasmine. We love you guys. We consider you part of our group.
It's fun to hang out with you guys. Y'all stay up a little too late for me sometimes because I'm an old lady, so I like to go to bed a little bit early. But no, it's totally fun. I always have a good time.
Unfortunately, I've never been able to do Robbie's live channel to the end. It's like he starts at 1 a.m. UK time on a Sunday, and I'm like, I have tuned in. Whenever I've tuned in, I've done like the first half an hour, and I'm like, man, I've got to go to bed. So you'll tend to see me commenting a few bits in the first 30 minutes, and then I'm like, no, man, I'm off now. So, or a lot of the time, I don't even say goodbye. There's a few times I just close my eyes. I'm like, right,
no worries.
And then I wake up at like 5 a.m. I'm like, okay, like they've already gone, So, yeah, just like one last question before we jump on. Is there anything you've kind of learned from Instagram and YouTube, that you can take away from this whole experience?
Man, I learned a lot of things, man. I learned a bunch of stuff about myself, about friendship, reaching out to people. It's just so much. I learned to appreciate life a lot more, to live in the moment, to have as much fun as I possibly can while I'm here, just because of all the people that passed away on us during this past year. Just because in this community in particular, people just seem to be very helpful and very good to each other.
So can you hear those cars? I was just gonna say
I'm
for anyone
sorry.
listening. I was gonna say, like, for anyone listening, Fable lives like dead in the center of New York.
Right in New York, yeah.
It's a busy town. So
Yeah, it's the city that never sleeps.
Yeah, I literally was about to say that. I was about to say the city that never sleeps. So
but yeah, man, forging those friendships, meeting all these people, dealing with all these personalities, and learning how to live together and grow together, like you say. Like, that's part of the grow together thing is so many different personalities. And I'd rather have it like that because I don't like a whole bunch of yes men. I don't like a lot of people to have the same opinions that I do. I want somebody to call me on my opinions of things if they disagree, so we can have a good conversation,
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, well, it's like me and Jasmine. I mean, we sometimes we like the same stuff, sometimes we don't. I mean, sometimes Jasmine's just pure wrong. Like
that is untrue. That is completely false. Fake news. Okay, fake news.
There's one show that she's completely wrong about.
No, there's one show that you're completely wrong about, and the Queen's Gambit is really boring. I'm sorry, it's boring.
I saw her and a bunch of her friends on Twitter the other day slating the Queen's Gambit, and I tweeted them all going, "I've never seen so many wrong people on Twitter." So I mean, sometimes when people are wrong, you got to call them out, right, Fable?
No, wrong. No. I don't think that's what Fable meant, Mark.
I don't think that's what he meant either. But anyway. Bring that little chat to an end, and it's been great to just get a little bit more about yourself. And
absolutely.
But what we're going to do is we're going to just take a break for a moment, and we'll be back in a minute to chat about A Quiet Place 1.
I'm Tom. My partner Mike and I have been friends and co-workers for a long time. And at work, we're known for our daily water cooler conversations about TV shows and movies we are currently watching. Whether we're arguing over which Marvel TV show is the best or agreeing about which Netflix original movie is the worst. The pop culture conversation is always popping on Two Brothers at a Water Cooler. You can listen to Two Brothers at a Water Cooler on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are available. Subscribe and share today.
Get it done! Get it done!
And we're back for A Quiet Place 1.
Right. So, Quiet Place, directed by John Krasinski, written by Brian Wood, Scott Beck, and John Krasinski. It stars Emily Blunt as Evelyn, John Krasinski as Lee, Millicent Simmons as Reagan, Noah Jupe as Marcus, and Cade Woodward as Bo.
So this was released on the 6th of April 2018 in America. I haven't checked the UK date, but I'm sure it's not far off there. The budget for this movie, 17 million, and at the box office made 350 million US dollars.
Okay, that is insane. That's insane. That is a ridiculous return on investment. Right? 17 million and it turned over 350?
You gotta think the guys who chucked the money in for that movie were like, when is the sequel coming?
Yeah.
Almost immediately.
Yeah, well, it pretty much did, didn't it? Like if COVID hadn't happened, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, I mean, what a turnaround in investment. And I know you do hear about movies where it goes the other way around. They put 350 in and they make 17 million.
Yeah.
But I mean, you got to think for the guys that said, yeah, we're gonna stick money in for this. Like they must have been killing
over the moon.
So just a bit of a summary of the movie, which I love. This is one of the things I actually love and endears me about this movie is that part one starts on day 80 something. And I actually do love that literally the first thing you see is day 87 or something or other. And then you're introduced to the whole Abbott family in a very surreal rundown town and, almost a post-apocalyptic sort of feel about it. And they're in a supermarket and they're just having to be very, very quiet. And obviously, from the trailers that you have to be quiet. Like I already knew there was that whole thing. And within the first 10 minutes, unfortunately, the Abbott family do lose their their 4-year-old son, Bo Abbott, and that kind of sets the scene. But then what I love is after that, it flashes up day 450
72
something or other. Yeah, 72. Okay. And I didn't write those days down, but I knew it was 400 and something.
Yeah.
So that brings you like over a year later, and Evelyn is heavily pregnant. So the moment I saw that, and I already knew anyway from, again, the poster and the trailers, but I was like, you've just set up this world where you can't make a single sound, and an airplane, a space shuttle killed off your child, and then you've just landed us with a pregnant woman. So then the rest of the movie kind of is spent over sort of a day or two period of time, and it kind of shows the world that they're living in, things like not being able to use plates and cutlery. They have leaves for plates, and they literally have designed their whole world around not making a noise. And then follows us through to Evelyn eventually giving birth and a massive confrontation at the end. We'll go through all of those as we break down the movie. But we'll just do a little round the table here and just find out what everyone's overall thoughts are on this movie. So before we say that, like, did you two watch this film when it first came out, or watch it just for this? So I know Jasmine watched it for this episode. Phable, did you watch this originally, or did you watch it as part of just coming on here?
No, just part of coming over here. I actually watched both movies back to back today.
Oh, awesome. Like, so it's fresh in your mind. So I did watch the first one when it came out. I didn't watch it at the cinema. I did watch it when it was out at home. But I, like yourselves, rewatched it. So start with you, Phable. What's your sort of 2-minute summary of this movie? Did you enjoy it? Just what's your overall thoughts?
Well, first of all, darn you for making me watch these two movies, because this family dynamic matches my family dynamic almost exactly. So right away I was sucked in, right? Because you got the older kid, you got the two kids and the expecting mom. That's exactly where I'm going through right now. I have one older one small one, and one on the way. So it hit me right away.
So you're going to be a 3-child family soon.
Yeah.
But I hope no aliens come.
I mean, overall, I think this is a great monster movie, man. This is a good return to what I would call like Spielbergian kind of movies. Like, there's children involved, so it grabs you that way. There's a menacing creature, and then there's a gimmick to it, and it just flows really good. Great pacing. So yeah, this movie overall, I would say, is just a great monster film.
Oh, thanks, man. What about you, Jasmine? What's your overall thoughts on this movie?
I thought that first film was really good. I hated every single minute of watching it, but I thought it was a really, really good film. I do not enjoy movies like this. I would never ever have watched this film had it not been for this episode, because like I get so tense, like the emotion that they portray, and the, like you were saying, Phable, the pacing. Right. Tension is what drives this film, and it is done phenomenally well. I mean, it is so well done, and it is so well paced. It's impossible to dislike it, but I mean, like I said, I hated the experience of watching the movie. But I did think it was a really good movie. Am I ever going to watch it again? No chance in hell. Am I ever watching this again? But I really did. I thought it was great. And for a film with so little dialogue, right. It was actually pretty jarring in some points when we got some whispers, or when we got like a sentence, and it was just like, this movie is an hour and a half long, and we probably have, I don't know, a total of 6 minutes of dialogue in the whole film. Like, this is wild.
It's like the opposite to a musical, isn't it?
Right. But it was incredible how even the kid actors, like how well everyone emoted, and especially when they're emotional, but they're also signing back and forth to each other. It's like you can see the emotion in the movements that they're making, like every breath that they take, or when, you know, every step that they take. It was just impeccable. I mean, it was a really impressive film.
Yeah, I have to agree. So I watched this originally when it came out in 2018. I've actually watched this first one twice this week. So I watched it last Sunday, and I watched it again a couple of hours before we started recording, which I'm glad I did, actually, because it kind of got me pumped to start doing this recording. I'm glad I rewatched it, because I personally love this film. I think it's actually a really, like you said, Faye, it's a good horror movie. I love the fact that actually they don't show too much about the monsters, and I love the fact that we don't know really anything about the origin of the monsters, because actually this is actually a film about the characters of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is about the Abbott family and their journey of survival, and what they've gone through, like, you know, the trauma that they've gone through, and seeing them from, you know, that day they lost their 4-year-old son to, you know, how it ends with gaining a new child, but also facing another loss, and the journey that they go through. And we obviously see several moments within that hour and a half movie. But I think actually the pacing, what you said about earlier, actually is really good, because there's some moments are really slow and really quiet.
Yeah.
Right. I wasn't on edge during those periods of time. But you do know there is that constant threat. Yeah. And but during those moments of quiet, I loved seeing the interaction between the children and the parents and stuff like that. You know, even moments where obviously where Lee and Evelyn are dancing together with headphones on, because obviously you can't play music loudly. You know, and the two kids are playing the board games. Just those nice quiet moments of family time, and then just seeing the craziness at the end. And like, I know that whole edge of your seat stuff. So I didn't necessarily find it scary, but I was edge of my seat during the right periods of time.
It was terrifying. What are you talking about? And I honestly, you know, like, the more I sit with it, the more I would actually argue against it being a creature feature. I think it's definitely more of like, it really is a human, like, it's a character driven story, and the catalyst happens to be monsters, but the way that this family interacts with each other and with the world around them, it's shockingly good. Like, I want to kind of compare it to Pitch Black, but with Pitch Black, it's like you automatically know that the monsters are the bad guys and bad things are going to be happening. But it's a totally different feel watching Pitch Black versus watching A Quiet Place, because you just, no matter who you like in Pitch Black, like, you just do not have the connection to the characters that you get with the characters in A Quiet Place. And I think that's kind of what
I can see where you're comparing that, but with this film, obviously they pull you so much into those characters.
Exactly. So it feels actually, like a different story.
That's a nice segue there, Jasmine. You've set up well. Favorite characters around the room, like, so I actually have to say it's quite difficult. Like, in all honesty, I found it difficult to pick a favorite. But if I was going to put you on the spot, Fable, who would your favorite be?
On the spot, I would probably say the dad. Krasinski. Yeah, because I mean, he had, how much responsibility does that man have? I mean, he's got the 2 kids, he's got the wife, she's pregnant, she just went through a child's death, and he has to carry all of that on his back and not show an inch of it, not show the kids any worry. He calmed them down a few times in this movie, set them straight. His resolve was so strong, and it takes a special man to be like that in that time, especially with everybody around you just seeming like they're in pain or suffering. And he knows that he's responsible for all of them, right? Because that's his wife, those are his children. You know what I mean? He has to bury all of that stuff down and take care of priorities, you know?
I'm not a fan of the American Office, but I have seen clips of him. I'm not a fan of the English Office either, but seeing him go from that, and I've seen him in I forgot the name, the Amazon TV show that he's in. Oh, the Jack Ryan show. Obviously, he's amazing in the Jack Ryan show, but to see him go from where he was as this sort of goofy actor in The Office, to see him as action hero as Jack Ryan, and also as Lee Abbott, I think that the growth as an actor, and we'll talk about the directing and stuff like that in a minute, but like his journey as a creator, like it's just amazing. Right. So it's nice to hear your favorite. What about you, Jasmine?
Evelyn, because any woman that could give birth, I only screaming one time. Like
crazy.
She went up and down the stairs. She got away from monsters. Like she was doing all of this strategic stuff while in labor. I was like, I can't.
That weren't just a scream. That was man. That was every scream she's ever wanted to do.
Yes.
Ever. Like,
yeah.
And I mean, when those fireworks went off and just seeing her let rip like from her throat, like honestly, she'd been holding that in, boy.
Oh
like,
yeah.
You know, it made me think of I'm not overly knowledgeable on Scientology, but apparently in Scientology that you have to forced to give birth in silence. I'm pretty sure. Like I didn't Google that to check, so I could just be lying completely. But I'm pretty sure that like I'm pretty sure
following.
yeah. I'm pretty sure that like Katie Holmes or something had to give birth in silence or something. So that's what I thought of. I'm dead sure that's what I heard. And when I saw this, I did think of that, thinking, how on earth does anyone give birth in silence? Like so, but the acting chops of Emily Blunt, though, to that whole scene that you're talking about, like walking up and down the stairs, the moment where the nail goes in her foot, just seeing Emily Blunt's just amazing dynamic of acting. I have to say, I agree with you, Jasmine. So, my favorite is Reagan. And to know that the actress Millie is actually deaf in real life
really?
is So
I didn't know that.
So she got into acting. So she was doing acting classes, and I can't remember the film she did before A Quiet Place, but she got an audition for that to play a deaf character, and that was her first big break. And then she obviously got into A Quiet Place. But like to see just like how strong she is and bring in, like, honestly, she for me was, I loved seeing the passion, like at that moment where her and her dad are sort of arguing and she's telling him to just stop, like just the passion in her sign language and her facial expressions, just seeing it's the visual part of acting. So it was just so good. And a lot of it was visual acting because like you said, Jasmine, earlier, there's like 6 minutes of dialogue in this film. But honestly, seeing her passion was just so amazing to me. Like, and I thought for such a young actress, I said, I really want to see a long career for Millie. I think she's going to be someone to watch out for. So
yeah. Also, side note, yes, silent birth is a thing with Scientology, and reportedly Katie Holmes gave birth to Siri silently because the guy who created Scientology says that a quiet birth allows the baby to be born in a calm and peaceful environment. And the moral of that story is, kids, do not join cults. Please don't join a cult.
I'm glad you said it.
I mean, see, I'm dead sure. I knew that I'd read that somewhere about the Scientology thing, about the silent birth thing. So.
Leave it to a group of men to tell women, be quiet when you give birth. I mean, honestly.
Anyway, let's not comment anymore about Scientology before they find us.
Right. Okay, we don't make enough money to hit their radar. I promise. It's fine.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to tempt fate. Anyway, so let's talk about the structure of the film. And actually, I think that's quite an important thing to talk about with this movie because of its jumping around. So again, we'll start with Phable. Like, you know, when I talk about the structure, like obviously just bear in mind things like, you know, the script and just, you know, your fate, you know, what you feel about the structure in general. So what are your thoughts? And also, do you have any favorite scenes throughout the movie?
I think the structure of the film is really sound. I think that I guess it would be the director or the writer. I don't know who breaks down the acts, but they broke them down pretty perfectly. They showed the dynamics between everybody visually, which is pretty tough to do. Like Jasmine had said earlier, you have no dialogue and you have to tell the story and get these points across because you have to know the rules of the world in order to get the suspense, right? To feel the danger.
In order for the audience buy-in. Right, exactly.
So, you know, when you see her lightly stepping across the floor, and the parts where you're supposed to step are painted. Little things like that just go a long way in storytelling. And
there's a lot of attention to detail in this film.
Yeah, and it's all over the place. I mean, it's from beginning to end. They do this visual, like, that's why I said Spielbergian earlier, because Spielberg, in my opinion, what makes him great is how much storytelling he can do without saying anything, like just showing a scene or the way the scene breaks down. And this movie has tons of that. I'm actually really shocked that this was made for as cheaply as it was made.
Yeah, exactly. And it reminds me of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. You keep bringing up Spielberg, but it does, like, right. I wouldn't call that, like, I mean, yes, it's about aliens, but like I wouldn't really call that an alien movie either, because you are so drawn in by the people of the town. And I think that this one, it's very similar to that.
To me, I get Jurassic Park vibes. Or remember the two children and when they were in the kitchen and the Velociraptor enters.
Oh my God. Room? That scene still scares me.
So this movie is that scene, the movie.
Yeah, no, see, this is why I had a hard time watching it.
I think Jurassic Park probably scared me more than this film. Like,
I remember running out of the theater when I was a kid when that scene happened, and I went with my dad, and he had to send someone to the women's bathroom to get me out of the bathroom because I refused to go back into the theater.
It's just the way the camera comes in, the way it pans on certain things. It, like you said, it just visually builds the tension without saying too much. I mean, like that part where she was trying to get her child that was still in the makeshift crib that they had, and the alien had dove underwater. And she gets right to the crib, and the way the camera pans up and his head comes out of the water at almost the exact same time. It was masterful.
Oh yeah, it was beautifully done. I think the direction of this film, like, just John Krasinski, I think he's put this film together so well. Like, and obviously people play different parts, like the editing and stuff like that, but his acting, which we talked about earlier, his direction, and the script, it was just all gelled. Literally every single part like worked so well together to make this film. So, and that's something you don't always find, like that you get all the parts working, and like you said, for such small budget as well. I think $17 million for this movie is just amazing. So what about you, Jasmine? Any thoughts on the structure of the movie?
No, it's near perfect, to be quite honest. There's not much to add to that. I mean, as far as favorite scenes, I'm going to be a terrible, awful, horrible human being, and I'm going to say my favorite scene was the beginning when they lose their youngest son, because I did not expect that to happen at all. I assumed that John would step in, or I'm sorry, Lee would step in and save the day, and the family would be fine. So to be thrown completely off from the very beginning of the film, that was the moment that let me know that this was not going to be anything like what I expected it to be. So I think that scene on the bridge really, really, really set the mood for the rest of the film.
I think in terms of the structure of the film, I actually love that you get dropped in on day 80 something, and you don't know what happened, and you just see this family in this supermarket, and it's quite eerie because you get introduced to the family actually one character at a time. So you don't necessarily know when you see like a shadow of someone in the background, like the dad, that necessarily everybody's a good guy, because these type of films, you don't always see sort of the good guy. How many times have you watched The Walking Dead where they've gone scavenger hunting and they go in a supermarket, and then like there's somebody living in the supermarket that like wants to kill them?
Or how about like Japan Sinks, where you got the guy in the supermarket with a bow and arrow that kills people?
There was that. So so I love the fact that you've got the opening scene day 80 something, then the next scene is day 400 and something, and and then you kind of, I love how you spice it up, how we don't see anything from day 1 to day 80, and then you don't see anything from day 80 to 400, and sort of you get to just see the moments of their lives for this story. I think that is done well. I just think, like I said earlier, everything about this movie works. Like the whole edge, the way they create the tension, the way they just spiced it all together. It was just so beautiful. So, and also what you must love, Fable, is the fact that it's, you know, set in New York. So,
Yeah, I found that kind of interesting. I was like, you know, I would have thought there would have been a lot more psychos out in the street. It was kind of barren.
Yeah, but
it was upstate New York, upstate.
It's not, yeah, I was going to say, it's, you know, it's where all the rich folk live, you know.
Yeah.
So, like,
well, you know, if you live in New York, you might say that the rich people might be a little crazier.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And again, for such little budget, the CGI in this film was just outstanding. So
there was a lot of detailing on those monsters. With the way that their head plates come out when they're trying to listen, and the way that you almost get like a close up look of the sonar in their ears, like as they're trying to listen to what's going on. It's wild.
Yeah,
let's quickly talk about
kind of scary too. Like,
that was
let's
kind
quickly
talk about,
you know, the ears there. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's right. I was going to say, let's quickly talk about the end of the movie, because I love that final sort of battle scene, and I love the moment where Millie. I'll be honest with you, I was a little bit disappointed it took her as long as it did to realize the weakness, but I love that she does click. She sees the weakness, kind of puts two and two together. And I love the fact that it's mother and daughter save the day. So although the dad had sacrificed himself earlier in the movie, like about 10 minutes earlier, I think he was going to die anyway because he was holding his side. So I'm assuming that the monster had probably got down quite deep, and he thought, well, I'm going anyway, so I may as well go out in style and try and give my kids a little bit longer. But I love the fact that it is the mother and the daughter, and the son is holding the baby. So it's the three of them really together, but it's really the mother and the daughter saving the day, and the mother, and Millie realizing that she's got a weapon to save them. And I love the fact that, like, how it ends, it kind of just ends mid-battle, really. She just kind of loads the shotgun, and that's it. Titles come up. I mean, what did you think about that, like that sort of overall ending scene?
I thought it ended really good. I like it when it's like, because the moment that they realize that this sound that they emit from those little hearing aids is the trick, I mean, their whole confidence shoots up. I mean, you can see Emily Blunt's face. She's like, oh, it's on now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it ends right there, which is like a good grindhouse ending, you know? Like, boom, that's it. Credits.
Did you ever watch Buffy and Angel? But Angel, so did you see the final ever episode where it ends in an alleyway and the dragons rock up or whatever?
Yeah.
Like, and it literally ends with them kind of, I don't know if they're going to charge for.
They're running off into the sunset.
Yeah, well, they're literally battle time, and then the titles come up, and I was like, what? Like, you can't leave us there.
But that's a little different. That's 5 seasons of investment. Ended like that. That's like, oh.
No, but I just more meant like the ending was like mid-battle, and that's kind of how this movie felt. It felt like you knew 2 more aliens were on the way in, and it kind of like ended mid-battle. So what I loved was how it left you wanting more, and you know, and obviously we got more, but we didn't know that at the time. So when it ended, you know, I kind of was under the impression this was a one-off movie. So, but obviously, looking at the return on investment, no investor was going to be silly enough to leave this alone. So, we'll sort of wrap that up in for our first review. And just what would you rate it, Fable, out of 5?
I'd give it a 4.5 out of 5. I don't give it the perfect score only because I've seen this trope before in several movies, but it was entertaining from beginning to end. So although it's not a fresh concept to me, it's still one of the best that executed it.
What about you, Jasmine?
I give it a 5 just because this damn movie stressed me out so bad that I could not watch the second one in the same day. Like, my plan was watch the first one and then immediately watch the second one so I could get it all over with at one time. Man, let me tell you how that did not happen. By the time this movie ended, my first thought was, thank God it's over. I'm so stressed. But yeah, I'm giving it a 5 because it literally dragged me along, kicking and screaming the whole way. And then by the time it was all over, I was still like, thank you, please, sir, can I have some more?
Absolutely.
I think I'd have to, I'm like between a 4.5 and a 5. maybe I'll. Do you know what? I've never done it before. This will be my first. I'm going to give it a 4.75. Like, so
Nice.
like I actually think this is a really good movie, really strong movie. I have to agree with what Faye was saying. There's good chunks of it's not original. I mean, the sound thing is kind of original. Like from what I don't think I've seen anything done by sound. I guess we've seen elements of the sound thing though in Jurassic Park with the raptors. So you could say it has been done before on TV. It makes you think of Jurassic Park 1 when they're in the kitchen having to be really quiet. So we have had the sound thing before, but we've not had it to the extremes of these people literally can hear like a, flipping breadcrumb drop, across the room. So, but yeah, I think overall the direction of this movie was just perfect. Like, the direction, the synergy of the acting, the directing, the editing, the production, and to do it on such little budget. Yeah, honestly, 4.75. I think it's a damn good score for this movie. And probably, like you say, maybe just probably chip away just because of the fact that it's not an overly original idea. But I just love this movie overall. So, and as I said a minute ago, we didn't think we were going to get any more. But we did. we did get more. So hold on a minute. So right, we are ready to go. A Quiet Place Part 2.
All the same, everyone from the first one, same director, same writer, same cast. Additional cast include Cillian Murphy as Emmett and Jaimin Hunsu as the man on the island.
What a terrible name.
I know.
Do you know what? Like, I didn't watch any trailers of this movie. Just going to say, I didn't watch any trailers. Didn't want to be spoiled. I did know going into it that John Krasinski was back as Lee, and that they were going to shove a prequel scene at the beginning. I did hear that. And I was like, okay, like it's good that he'll be back for a little bit, but also that would be just really annoying because you're going to love him being back and then he'll be ripped from us again. But that is pretty much all I knew. When I saw Man on the Island, I was like, oh, that sounds quite ominous. I was like, I actually went in thinking that he was going to be a bad guy. That's what I thought. So that was just a perception from Man on the Island. So I thought that sounds a bit dodgy.
Yeah.
Anyway. Budget for this, I couldn't exactly find the exact amount, but it's roughly 61 million. But box office return was 297 million.
Again. Okay, now 61 is a big jump from 17, but still 61 million, and you turned around 297. That's insane. That's awesome. That's superhero movie numbers.
So this was so we'll talk about this now, COVID impact. So after a year of delays due to COVID, this movie was released in US theaters on May 28th, 2021, and it was released in the UK on the 3rd of June, 2021. And so it didn't go into streaming services straight away. So I think in America, it went on to Paramount Plus 45 days after being in theaters. And this has been, I think it's like the number 8th best like movie in terms of return on at the box office this year. So it's done really well. And I think actually that's probably what a good little thing that they've done there. It went to the theaters before it went into streaming. So there wasn't, I actually think that's a good move not to do day and day. I think put it in theaters first. And then if you don't want to go to the theater, that's fine, but you've got to wait 45 days. I think that's a good compromise because I think the theaters need the love. And if you're like in a place where you're happy to go to the theaters, then great, go and enjoy yourself. But if you're not happy, look, 45 days, it's not a big deal. It's not like you've got to wait 6 months, like sort of pre-COVID, 45 days, I think is actually the shortest window between cinema release and any kind of service. So I think that's a damn short window. So I do think I'm not going to talk about Black Widow, but I think that's what they should have done with Black Widow. So I mean, they could have prevented some sort of court action there. Anyway, so summary of the movie. So I'm just going to summarize this movie. It is brilliant. Again,
that is not a summary.
No, not of the movie itself is what I was going to say. It's of the structure. I love the fact that the first 10 minutes are day one. I actually loved going into this movie and seeing day one. So day one literally is seeing the impact and how the Abbotts come to cross paths with these aliens. And I love the fact that we do get John Krasinski back in the first 10 minutes. He pretty much runs that first 10 minutes, I have to say. Like, I think that was a good thing. So I read online that he wanted to come back because it was kind of like a love letter to like his family and being a father and that kind of thing. And he kind of wanted to write himself back in. And so then what I love is how that when that first 10 minutes ends, we then literally end up at the scene where the first one finished. And I thought that was brilliant. And
that was an incredible transition.
Right.
I know that, and like the transition between the massive fight at the end of day one, and then suddenly we're back in the basement of the house where Emily Blunt's character was due to kill those two aliens. I presume she did kill the two aliens, but we just don't see that bit. So, and then they spend some time at the house before they leave and go on a long journey. And then obviously they come across Cillian Murphy's character, and we begin a bit of an adventure with him, and we get to find out. We don't get to see the journey, but we can see where he started and kind of where he finished. And I think seeing his bond between him and Millie, or Millie's character, I think was brilliant as well throughout the movie. And once those two go off, they begin like separate journeys. We see obviously Emily Blunt's character and her son and the daughter, and then Millie and Cillian Murphy's character, and obviously the journey that they'll go through. And what I love is how the end scene is pretty much the children. Like, so, and I love how they mirror that at the end. Yes. And we'll break it down when we talk about the end, but then I love that they fucking do it to us again when it ends. I'm like, I literally went on to Google if there are part 3. Like, I literally was like, you can't do that to us again. So anyway, we'll break down the plot in the movie as we go through, but what's your overall thoughts, Phable, on part 2?
Part 2 is like more of the same, really. I mean, it just takes everything that was great about part 1, throws it in into part 2, and doesn't let up to the end. The only thing that I would say is, okay, well, like watching part 1, right? Certain things started creeping up, which I forgave, right? Because it's a movie. You can't get too technical. You ruin the movie for yourself. But like, there's certain tropes, like, okay, for instance, in part 1, where she drags the bag and it lifts up the nail in the stem.
Oh, I know, that bit was stupid.
Right, I see that, and already I'm like, okay, this nail's gonna come into play at some point, right? So they do that a few times throughout the movie, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But then it starts getting kind of like unbelievable in part 2. Certain things start happening that's like, okay, these guys have the worst luck in the world.
Yeah.
Or, you know what I mean? Something's got to give. And the other thing is the creatures themselves. Although I love the creatures and I love the whole suspense that they bring and the danger that they bring, they kind of come out of nowhere in a lot of instances. It's like nobody even heard them creep up. They just appear, which is a little bit unbelievable too, given their size and girth. But little things like that. But other than that, man, it's more the same. And I'll take it. Like you said, give me some more.
Yeah. Give me some more. Yeah. Thinking of Busta Rhymes now. So Jasmine, give me some more. What's your overall thoughts?
Yeah, I thought that there was a lot more people interaction in this one, not just because we met new characters, but just the interaction between Evelyn and Reagan and Marcus, like that was so much deeper and like so explored like so much more to me in this one. So we got so much more character expansion. And there was one part, it wasn't a favorite scene, but it stuck out with me because it felt so real when the son is running and he gets caught in that bear trap. And he doesn't scream at first until he rolls over and looks at his foot and sees how fucked up it is. And then he like loses his mind. That's exactly what that feels like. Like it reminded me of when I was a kid. I flew off of some playground equipment and I busted the back of my head open. When I came to, it hurt like hell. And I was like, damn, that really hurts. But I was not crying. I was not hysterical, nothing. I put both of my hands behind my head and both of my hands came back bloody. and I lost my shit. I lost my shit on the playground in front of all of those people. But it wasn't until like I saw the blood myself that it was kind of like, oh my God, what is happening? And so like when that scene happened and he just forgets everything and just screams at the top of his lungs because his foot is literally caught in a bear trap. I was like, this is the realest shit I have ever seen in my life. Like this is so wild. So I felt like the character connection in this one is even more prominent, even more well done than in the first film.
I think going into this movie, I was concerned about the lack of John Krasinski. So I did love the fact that we got 10 minutes of him at the beginning, which was brilliant. And I honestly think the transition between day 1 and day 470 or whatever it was so well done, so well executed. I think showing John Krasinski walking around the town and showing the little video of something happened in Shanghai, which does allow you now to believe like that this is happening around the world. But because things like this, when they do happen, like people don't necessarily know what's going on. So the communication isn't that strong initially. You know, even if you think about COVID, like people weren't really, COVID was around for probably about 5 months before people were even really talking about it. Like, I think a lot of the governments were just hoping it would go away. So, but it's the same with anything. Like they kind of, until it really hits you and affects you, people are not really like they're oblivious. Like, John Cena's character, what's going on there? Oh, I think it's a bomb or something. Like, and then he goes off to play his baseball game. Like, yeah, it's a bomb or something. But he literally doesn't ask any more questions because it doesn't affect him. It doesn't affect his character. It doesn't affect the world that they live in. And how many times did stuff like that happen? Like, oh, what's going on? Oh, I think it's a bomb. Okay, like just get on with my day. It's not a bomb in my town. Like, if a bomb had gone off in your street, like the other end, you'd be like, damn, boy, I can't get out there. But because it's across the world, there's no impact for him. So I love the sort of the attention to detail there. I think, like you said, Phable, though, it is more of the same. But I definitely think there's a lot more character interaction, like you said, Jasmine. And I think there's probably got to be at least 20 minutes of dialogue in this film as opposed to 6. Yeah. There's a lot. They're a lot freer to talk, and that's because of how they've mechanized this film. So things like how Cillian Murphy's got this sort of bunker, which is soundproofed, which allows for some conversation between the characters, which I think is great. And also the fact that when they eventually find the island, that they reveal that the monsters can't swim. So, which is another weakness, actually. So I wonder how many boats there are, how many civilizations made it onto boats. They talked about at one point during the film that there was 10 boats and only 2 got away. But it'd be interesting to see the story of some of these boats, for instance. Like, I mean, it might be kind of boring if there's no aliens popping up, but it would be interesting just to see, if they did a TV special or something like that, how the boats are getting on would be pretty cool. So, but yeah, overall, I really love this film. I think it was just so well executed. So that's just my overall thoughts, really, and the ending really got me again. So, do you Jasmine, what about you? Favorite character in this movie?
Oh yeah, it's different. This time it was Reagan, 100%. Reagan was my favorite character throughout the film. Like she was strong in the first film, but she went above and beyond in the second one. And it was kind of like that the point where, they're on the island and they're eating dinner with everyone else and Jaimin Hunsu and Cillian Murphy's character are talking. And he's like, oh, yeah, so you figured it out, right? Like, you figured it out because of the song that we were playing? And Cillian Murphy was like, no, I didn't figure out anything. She did. And Jaimin Hunsu's character was like, but she's deaf. Like, how did she figure this out? And Cillian Murphy was like, listen, man, it couldn't be me. Like, so I loved her. I loved that she is the hero of this film.
Oh, she's 100% like the hero. Mm-hmm. What about you, Phable? Favorite character?
I agree 100%. Definitely Reagan. She's taken the lessons of her father, and she's applied them to her life, and you just see him continue on through her. Yeah, definitely.
I think he'd be proud to see her growth, So I think she's really sort of coming out from her father's shadow and carrying forth his journey. So I have to say I agree with you about Reagan. But I equally loved Cillian. I think he was just so good. That Peaky Blinder really did a wonderful job in this movie, and I actually really love. And again, it does come down to the actress Millie, the bond between those two. But what I love about the character is he didn't want to go after Millie. He didn't want to be involved. He didn't want to be involved. He'd had heartbreak. He'd lost his wife. He'd lost his children. He was living in the middle of nowhere. He basically wasn't living. So when you start the movie in day one, you know, you can kind of see that him and Lee, sort of, you know, Cillian's character Emmett and Lee have got a friendship. I don't think it's made clear how strong that friendship is, but the fact that Lee asks about his brother says to me they know each other more than just sitting on some seats watching football, rugby game. Sorry, not rugby. What was it? It was
baseball.
Baseball. Right. Sorry, I completely went blank on the sport, but yeah. But anyway, so I went blank on the sport there, but the baseball game. So I personally think. Do you know what I was going to say? I was trying to stop myself from saying it. Rounders, like so. Phable, in case you don't know, we call baseball over here rounders. Yeah, but if you said baseball, we'd know what it was. Anyway, so that interaction there, but how Cillian's character is he's almost like Lee. He's family driven. He's taking his family away. He's protecting his family. That, you know, there's a little bond between him and Millie at the beginning when he says, "How do you say dive?" It's all very, I would say, kind of manly. Like, you know, I've been in those situations where I'm sitting on the side watching my kids do something with a couple of other dads, and we're kind of exchanging kind of very like almost like non-important conversation.
Yeah,
like that's kind of like how. So I wouldn't say they were best friends, but they definitely had a.
They were
friendship.
Friendly.
Yeah,
they were friendly.
I mean, I would assume they were really close, and I'm only going to say that because of Emily Blunt's speech to him.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
When she was telling him to go after his daughter. Yeah, the way she was talking to him.
Maybe that was Lee's best friend.
Yeah, she knew that if she said that, he would have to go after her.
Yeah, she said something like along the lines of if Lee was here, like blah blah blah, you know. So that made me think, okay, well, my initial impression was that they were just friendly, but maybe there's more to it that I don't know. Right. So and maybe if we get a part 3, maybe we'll get to see like maybe Emmett, maybe we might get to see some of Emmett's journey, like on date. Maybe they might
do you think they try to make him look like? Did you think that the director tried to intentionally try to make the audience second guess him?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, definitely.
I don't think it went off too well because he was just too endearing for you to second guess. But that scene where he found his wife's corpse, the boy.
Yeah, definitely. Corpse, yeah.
I think that they were trying to do that, but it just didn't work. I don't know.
I definitely think what they tried to do was create. So I do love the character of Cillian. That's what. Cillian's character Emmett. I do love, and I love the journey that you see, and I love the fact that you see him in a positive light at the beginning, to then finding him in a light where he doesn't want any human interaction. Reminded me a little bit of Will Smith in I Am Legend, where Will Smith had been on his own for like 3 years and had, and there was a comment by the girl from Queen of the South, the actress, I've forgotten her name,
Alice Braga.
Yeah. So she shows up and says like, how long has it been since you last spoke to a human? And I think it's exactly the same for Emmett in this. He hasn't had human interaction for a long time. As you mentioned, the wife's corpse body was fairly rotted away, so it's been a long time since he's had human interaction. And then seeing the journey that he went on with Millie, and when he has the interaction later on with the strange society that formed that wanted to kill him, almost like an offering, I assume, to these aliens, and how he formed the bond with Millie. I just love seeing all of that. But yeah, I may as well address your point now. I definitely think they were trying to lead us down a path that we were seeing the journey, but they did drop in several misdirection things to make you think that Emmett could potentially either be a bad guy
or just a piece of shit.
So earlier on in the movie, where him and Millie were at was it the train or bus or something like that, and then they go in the shop. Yeah, they go in the shop, and then she wakes up and her thingy's gone, and she's panicking, and then he comes along and he hands it back to her and says, "Oh, I found a boat," etc., etc. Like, he wasn't even aware that he scared the shit out of her. Like, but the audience has been going down a road now with, is this guy like for real? Has he actually like robbed her of the weapon, of the sort of the weapon against the aliens? Because has he become a self-trick? Is this movie now going to go down the road of Millie's now got to go and save the day against him? But so it was quite nice that he wasn't a piece of shit at that point. But this is clearly something they do in a lot of things, misdirection. So there was a little bit there, but and then there was misdirection again, I think, like you say, when the son Marcus found the dead body of the wife. I think that was done deliberately to create tension, because obviously he was elsewhere with Millie. So it was like, well, is now Millie with a bad guy? And it kind of brings up the question again. But actually, all it was just showing you a dead body for the sake of showing you a dead body. He just hadn't buried his wife for whatever reason, whether that was to do with sound, like, didn't want to make any sound, or maybe he just couldn't let go of his wife. Maybe he just had too much loss and just felt like having his wife nearby was what he needed.
Well, he said he lost both of his kids on day one, and he lost his wife 11 weeks before Emily and the rest of the family showed up.
So he obviously couldn't bear to lose anymore. Imagine losing both kids on the first day, like together. I mean, losing them at any point, whether it was day 500 or day one, would be horrific. But he's experienced obviously a mega lot of loss. So anyway, so I enjoyed him. He was my favorite character, but I did enjoy the bond between him and Millie. I think it was great. And I'm not saying that he's a John Krasinski replacement. He's not. But I think it was a clever move to bring in a different male character that wasn't necessarily now trying to become the love interest for Emily Blunt's character. He was not brought in as that. So, and I hope they don't go down that road.
And he wasn't brought in as a leader either.
No, he wasn't brought in as a leader. Millie's clearly the leader. Like Millie's
she's the brains.
She's the brains, but he also acknowledges that, which I thought was great. So what's your thoughts, Phable, on the structure of this film?
The structure was, again, just like the first one, well paced, sound. I might have done without the misleading things about what was his name again?
Emmett.
Yeah, the misleading scenes about Emmett, maybe, because I mean, when the kid left the hatch to go searching around the factory, it was just clearly a setup for something to happen, right? Like they're like this kid, so maybe I couldn't have done without that. Those are the things that bring it down for me a little bit, but mostly it was great. Nice confrontations, nice setup scenes with certain characters. That scene where they meet the crazy people on the dock. That's my favorite scene of the whole movie, because they're saying a lot without saying anything, and the tension is so there, right? Like, you see in this psycho dude, he's looking at the girl taking off her shirt. Your mind immediately goes to the worst places, and this is one of the things that I love about this movie in particular, is that there's a lot of horrific things that you can do in this movie, and they did not do it.
Right.
Do you know what, though? That, like how a lot of films have stories expanded in the world of comics. Like, I would love to see some comics of A Quiet Place, like, but exploring not the main characters necessarily, but things like you say, the people on the docks. What's their journey? We're never going to find out, like, because they're not going to revisit those characters. But if they release, like, I don't know, a 3 or 4 part miniseries, like the people on the docks, I'd actually be quite down for that, as long as they did it well, like, seriously, no jokey art or anything like that, but like pick somebody who could do horror, like some good strong horror art or something serious, some sort of serious toned artwork. I'd be, like, trying to think, maybe like even that Texas Blood or something like that, that kind of tone, or trying to think of Ed Brubaker when they does like Criminals, stuff like that, something more serious tone to it. I think I'd be really down with seeing something like that to explore these characters, because that scene, I can appreciate why that's probably your favorite, because it's such a tense scene. Obviously you just
and you have no idea what's going on.
Right.
Well, yeah, you
Right.
don't know what their motives are,
Right,
what their
exactly.
journey is. Well, what is their goal here? How many times have they done this? That little girl that's got a face cut up, like and how has she become so brainwashed into like trying to kill people? Like, I mean, that's fairly sick that they've managed to get some sort of 8-year-old kid into killing people,
Trapping people.
Yeah. So
And they also are in the same danger that the main characters are in.
Right.
They can't make any noise either. So they're trying to
Yeah.
pull off what they're trying to pull off with the same kind of tension that the main characters are going through. Because, you know, what if the people they're trying to capture scream?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah. Jasmine, what about you? What's your thoughts on the structure and got any favorite scenes? I've got a favorite scene.
I thought the structure with this one, I actually kind of enjoyed the misdirection. I love what they did with Emmett's character, with Emmett, because they made him honest. And because he was so honest, you got to see how vulnerable he was. Like, he was flat out like, look, I'm gonna help you today, but like tomorrow you need to be gone because like there's not enough food, there's not enough shelter. Like, I don't have the patience for you can't stay here. So he was always like really upfront about his feelings and his thoughts and how like he's like, I am barely hanging on by a thread. Like, I cannot do this with you and 3 kids. Like, this is not going to work. So I appreciated his sort of journey into reluctantly finally like letting Reagan kind of lead him to what she thought was the promised land, which turned out she was right. But to just see him be imperfect and honest and scared and just like all of those things all at the same time, as opposed to putting on an act. Right. So I appreciated that part. As far as like a favorite scene, honestly, my favorite scene, it's a toss up. So it's the scene where Evelyn uses the oxygen tank and like tries to set the monster on fire. I thought that was really great, just because like it felt like a big action set piece in a film that was like, you know, supposed to be super quiet, but now we finally got explosions. Like, this is awesome. I love that scene. And the scene where Marcus steps up and uses the radio to subdue the monster and then shoot it with a freaking revolver. Like, the kid who was terrified of absolutely everything finally steps into himself and like takes down a monster. I thought that scene was fantastic.
I think I'm like you. I'm a bit torn almost between the end and the beginning, like in terms of favorite scenes. And I mean, you can apply this to structure. I love the fact that this movie jumps back and shows us day one, and it still doesn't ruin the mystery of who and where these aliens came from. Like, I mean, we see something burning up in the sky. Is that a rocket? Is that a meteorite? We don't know. Like, one day we might find out. But like, I love the fact that you get to see Emmett's story. Yeah, sorry, not Emmett. Lee in the town, and clearly knows a lot of people. I love that first 10 minutes. I'll be honest with you, I've watched that 3 times this week. Just that first 10 minutes. I actually love the pacing of that. And you're on your edge of your seat because you know he's not in it for long. So there's no point showing that scene unless something happens, right? So there's no point. If it's just him going around the shops and picking up some shopping and going home, making dinner and going to bed, like, why would we care? So we know that there's going to be elements of the interaction with the aliens. And my first point where I'm like, it's coming, is when Emmett walks. Sorry, I keep saying Emmett. When Lee walks down the alleyway and you see the dog, and I'm like, man, that dog. I thought a dog is going to go crazy because the dogs will pick up the aliens before the humans do. So anyway, I love that first 10 minutes. I think it's absolutely brilliant. And then I agree with you, Jasmine, about my other favorite scene is it's at the end between Millie and the son. I forgot his name, Marcus. Where I love the literally showing Marcus, showing Reagan just flipping between the two of them, and them really stepping up and actually like Emily Blunt's character and Cillian Murphy's character are taking actually secondary positions to the kids. And Marcus, though, like, I can see why you sort of talk about Marcus as well, because he his journey, if you think about it from part 1 to part 2, he didn't want to go hunting with his dad to the point where now today he's like holding the speaker out and shooting the alien in the head. I'm just like, what a journey this boy's been on. I mean, and how damaging is that to that kid's mental states?
Seriously.
So, but no, I honestly thought this movie was just so brilliantly done. And when it ends though with that battle and the titles just come up, I honestly, not joking, I googled it. I mean, to be honest, we may as well kind of jump into talk about that kind of end scene now, really. Like, so I love that whole end battle. And when it ends and the titles come up, I honestly went straight into Google. I was like, they can't just leave that shit there. I was like, I was like, I accepted it with part 1. I was okay with it.
But I refuse to accept it this time.
I refuse to accept it only because also they're separated, you know, like you know, Reagan and Emmett are on this island, and obviously Emily Blunt's character and two children, other two children, the baby and her son, like in this sort of warehouse, and then they end it, and I'm like, I want to see them back together. Like, you know, I assume that they're gonna get back together. Like, it's still gonna just be left, but I want to see more. So apparently, I mean, there's nothing been said about a third one, but there is talk of a spin-off. So I don't know, but that won't be by John Krasinski, although I think he's going to be involved, like probably like a producer or something like that. And I think it's from an idea that he had, but I think other people are going to run it. You can see, if you think about the return on these things, 17 mil for was 130 million or something, and then, you know, we got 60 mil and made another 257 mil. Basically, the return on these things is just insane. So you can see Hollywood is not going to let this money train go. So,
they're not going to leave the money on the table.
Right.
You can imagine they're going to probably announce a Paramount Plus TV series at some point. So
hopefully it won't drag on the way Walking Dead does.
Well, no, but you can imagine this though, like A Quiet Place, just like going on forever. So, and even if they did a TV series, it wouldn't have to have the Abbott family in it. So, you could imagine actually Walking Dead being a very good take on what this franchise could look like. So. This, I don't think Hollywood's letting this thing go anywhere. No. So, what do you guys think about the ending?
Just like you said, great ending, leaves you wanting more. I definitely, as soon as I finished watching it, I was like, man, they should make this into a television show. First thing I thought in my head, but you know what? I don't know. It might have to stay a film series because a television show will just give you all the lore, right? They'll try to build machines to kill the monsters or figure out where they came from, or, you know, it'll be a lot more of the action instead of what was really going on in these movies. Like in the first movie, it was the children trying to recognize their parents' love for them, because I don't think they felt like their parents cared for them, and at the end, that's when they like all got the love. And then in the second movie, it was about them growing up. Right, like finally growing up, like the scared boy, like you said, timid through both movies, all of a sudden, and the daughter, you know, being like, "Hey, my dad's gone. I got to be the dad now. I got to be just like him. I'm protecting my family." So, if there's a third movie, there has to be a dynamic like that. It has to be a family sort of progression. Can't be about the monsters or the lore or any of that stuff.
The third one, you probably find out Lee's alive still and laying on the farm floor somewhere. We're joking about that when we watched it earlier, saying unless they're like, my sister watched it with me earlier, and she's like, if there's no dead body, if you don't see a dead body, they're still alive. I went, oh, me and Jasmine say this on the podcast all the time. Like, unless that character's decapitated.
Nah, I'm pretty sure though these monsters don't leave anything left alive. They squish everything.
I'm pretty sure too. I actually don't think they'll do anything cheap like that. So,
no.
What do you think about the ending, Jasmine?
I loved it, and I want to know how widespread it is. Like, when is someone going to get on that radio station and also like broadcast over the frequency? Like, yo, look, this is the frequency that kills these things. Like, play it out loud, drag them out, and then you can take them down. So I do want to know how that frequency spreads to everyone else. And as far as like the film itself, I had such a hard time watching the second one, like, because to me, it felt so much more character driven than the first one. There was literally a point where I paused the movie. I got up and I paced around my living room and I thought about texting Mark. And then I realized, like, no, I'm not going to text him, because if I text Mark, it's all going to be mean things. I'm just going to say mean things to Mark for making me watch this shit. But like, it was so tense and so heavy at some points that I was just sitting on my couch thinking, oh my God, I want this to be over. Like, I really want this to be over. I am so like freaked out watching it. It wasn't like scary, not like, you know, horror, like, I don't know, like Exorcist scary. Thank God it wasn't like that. But it was just so like, my chest was so tight because I am not the type of person to be able to like watch something and not be affected by it. So I'm taking on all of these emotions watching this film, which is why I don't watch stuff like this in the first place. But the way that this movie just kind of is so tightly wound, and then we get to the end and it's almost like this giant like release at the end with the two kids finally stepping up to the plate and actually saving the damn day and saving the adults. And it's like, well, now what? Like we the kids have finally reached like their apex where they're like, okay, I get it. I get my part that I have to play in this. So I do want to see what happens next with the kids. However, I would be fine with a third movie coming out and then someone explaining to me what happens in the third movie without me having to feel the tension of watching it myself.
Oh, we'll definitely have to do an episode on the third one.
Oh God.
So, Fable, what'd you rate this movie?
4.5, just like the first one. I don't think it's better than the first one. I think the first one has a quality to it that introduces you to these monsters in this world that is kind of lost in the second one. But the second one still has great scenes, great acting, great cinematography, you know, everything, the music. Mm-hmm. So yeah, same thing. I don't give it the 5 again because, like I said, the concept of post-apocalyptic, aliens, no sound, all those things have been done before. But this is one of the best examples of it. So. Mm-hmm.
What about you, Jasmine?
I'm gonna go 4.5 as well. I agree that it's not as good as the first one, but it's not that much off. Like, it's not too far off from the first one. So I gave the first one a 5. This one gets a 4.5.
You know, I actually really do love this movie. Like, there's so much I love about this film. I think I'm going to go in with a 5. I'll be honest.
Wow.
I think it's a really good film. It definitely, I think it had me a lot more on the edge of my seat throughout this movie. And the fact that when the first one ended, I was okay with it ending sort of mid-battle because I went in there actually just thinking this is a one and done, and I was like, yeah, I'm okay with that. Like, you know, a bit like there's a lot of sort of monster movies that end in that kind of manner, like leave you wanting a little bit more. But when this second one ends, leaving you wanting more, I was like, boy, I was like, this is the first time I actually was like, I need more like now. I was like, I want a release date. Like, no, nothing. So I'm giving it a 5. I love this film. I think it's really well done. Like, honestly, structure, everything. That opening scene, I think, was so powerful. I love things like when they do clever things like that, day 1 and then jump forward to day 400 and something. Right. And like, I do love it when you get the ability to have that sort of jumping around thing. And I think that was actually quite a unique thing to do, to jump back, and it was a good way of bringing John Straczynski's character back without undoing that death. So I imagine that probably some of the producers behind this who put the money in saying, look, you know, is there any way we can get you back in it? Well, yeah, there is, but I'm still going to be dead. So yeah, it'll be before I died. So, but
you know, I think what I loved about this movie the most was that they never ever explain these monsters. Like,
yeah, I think that
they are there and they are a problem, and that is all you need to know. And it freaking works. It works so well. Absolutely. We don't need a motivation. And I think a lot of people get tripped up with like, well, the monsters have to be there for a reason. Well, not really. I mean, if they're just kind of mindless creatures that roam around and don't really have a purpose, like, this makes sense. Like, they got stranded on this planet and they're defending themselves to the best of their own abilities. Like, the humans just happen to be in the way of that. So
I mean, because we don't have anything actually explained to us, it allows you to use your imagination. So
yes, which always makes it better.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I started to wonder one or two things. One, they just on some sort of meteorite or whatever, and it's just all fluke. Like they land on the planet and they're like, maybe that meteorite was part of another planet or moon or something, and because we don't know if they can breathe in space. They can go underwater, so can they breathe in space? I don't know. So we don't know if it's basically that they've ended on Earth by accident, or one of the things I started wondering was, did some sort of higher form intelligence think, do you know what, we need this planet, but we don't want to nuke it, so let's drop down these horrible, mother effing crazy aliens. They're just going to do the work for
Most
us.
definitely.
It take about 5 years before they've killed off 99% of the population,
and so then we come in and sweep up the rest.
We come in and we take over and take all the, I don't know, like the oil or whatever. So that's kind of why. But like I say, we don't know. So your imagination starts to play wild with you, like right. Who are these people, like that kind of thing. So, I love this film. I think it's great. It's a great film. It's really well done. So, and I'm looking forward to seeing more. I hope we don't get the spin-off before we get number 3. I really want to see them do number 3. I want to see them finish this. I'm thinking it's going to be a trilogy, and then if they do a spin-off later, I'm fine with that. Right. So I want to see number 3.
I just want to see them. See, one of the things that threw me off about this movie in a good way, because I like a lot of us, we don't like predictability in these movies, and this movie can feel like it's about to be really predictable, right? I mean, they have all these like tropes and setups and things, but what threw me off was how they didn't take the path of gratuity. Mm-hmm. Like I said, the girl. It's implied that they're going to do something with her, just the way the guy's looking at her, but they never get touchy-feely with her. They never show some uncomfortable stuff like him smacking her or kissing her or something, some weird, nasty thing. When the aliens come and they do their business, they usually just toss people to the side. There's no like, chop the head off, see the blood.
Right, they're not eating people. Like you don't ever come across a monster like eating someone's guts.
Yeah, there's so many times where they could have done that in another director's hands. I'm sure they would have.
Oh yeah.
Which elevates this movie to me in a lot of ways, because I didn't expect it to not be as gratuitous as it could have been.
Yeah, they don't take the cheap
shots.
Still
be good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll leave it there. I've really enjoyed chatting about both movies with both you guys, and thanks Phable for jumping on, and Jasmine, thank you for watching both these movies. So
you are not welcome.
Like you said, you love the films, you just didn't overly love the experience. So
not at all.
Anyway, in our next episode, we'll be joined by the author of Stray Dogs, Tony Fleeks, for our October conversation. So please come back for that.
And don't forget, we did start a second podcast series where we tackle some of the most essential graphic novels of all time. Our 10th Late to the Party Book Club episode was Why the Last Man by Brian K. Vaughan and Pia Guerra. That episode also marks our 1-year anniversary of the book club, so please be sure to check that out. We discussed some of our favorites throughout that series. That episode dropped at mid-September, and our next book club, we're going to be reviewing Batman: The Long Halloween by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale.
You can also follow Geeks Unleashed everywhere on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter as Geeks Unleashed. Phable, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram, One Collection Down, _collection_down. I do a show every Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. on IG Live called the Blame Phable Show.
1:30 p.m. New York time, everybody.
New York Eastern.
So the Blame Phable show, so you can join Phable, blame and blame again. So what was it someone said the other day? Always blame Phable. So.
Yeah, that's the joke on it.
And you can get this podcast wherever you get your podcasts: Google, Podbean, Apple, Spotify. We are everywhere. So please give us a 5-star review and tell your geeky friends.
Thank you very much. Good journey.
Good journey.
Good journey, Phable.
Station.